I want to talk today about something that affects an enormous number of people, and that most of them have never had the language for. Emotionally immature parents. Not abusive parents, necessarily. Not parents who were obviously cruel. The kind of parents who looked from the outside perfectly fine. They kept you fed. They kept a roof over your head. They showed up to the school events, maybe. By every external measure, they did their job. And yet you grew up with a persistent, hard-to-name feeling that something was missing. A loneliness inside the family. A sense that you could never quite reach them. A feeling that you were, in some essential way, on your own emotionally, even in a house full of people. If this resonates, I want to walk you through 6 quiet signs that you were raised by emotionally immature parents. I call them quiet because they are not dramatic. They do not show up in obvious ways. They are the subtle textures of a childhood that looked okay but did not feel okay. And I want to be clear from the start. The purpose of this is not to blame your parents. Emotional immaturity is usually passed down. Your parents were very likely raised by emotionally immature parents themselves, and they gave you what they had, which was not enough, because no one had given them enough either. The purpose here is understanding, because when you can name what happened, you can finally begin to heal from it and you can make sure the pattern stops with you. Stay with me. Let me start by explaining what emotional immaturity actually means, because it is a specific thing. An emotionally mature person can sit with their own feelings without being overwhelmed by them. They can consider another person's perspective. They can tolerate discomfort. They can take responsibility for their impact on others. They can offer comfort and attunement. An emotionally immature person struggles with all of these. They are easily overwhelmed by feelings, their own and yours. They struggle to see beyond their own perspective. They cannot tolerate much discomfort. They deflect responsibility. And crucially, they cannot reliably attune to a child's inner world, because attunement requires a stability they do not possess. So the child grows up technically cared for, but emotionally unmet. Let me give you the 6 signs. The first sign is that you became the parent in the relationship. This is called parentification, and it is one of the clearest markers. Somewhere along the way, the roles reversed. You became the one managing your parents' emotions instead of the other way around. Maybe you were your mother's confidant, hearing about adult problems you were too young to carry. Maybe you learned to monitor your father's moods and adjust your behavior to keep him calm. Maybe you comforted a parent who fell apart while no one was comforting you. The emotionally immature parent, unable to regulate themselves, unconsciously recruited you to do it for them. As an adult, you probably find yourself in the caretaker role everywhere. You are the responsible one, the one who holds everything together, the one others lean on, while you struggle to let anyone lean back. You learned, very early, that your job was to take care of others, and that no one was coming to take care of you. The second sign is that your feelings were treated as problems to be managed, rather than experiences to be understood. When you were sad, you were told to stop crying, or that there was nothing to be sad about, or that you were being dramatic. When you were angry, you were punished for the anger rather than asked what was wrong. When you were scared, you were dismissed. The emotionally immature parent cannot tolerate big feelings because they cannot regulate their own, so a child's big feelings threaten to overwhelm them. The result is that your emotions, instead of being met with curiosity and comfort, were met with annoyance, dismissal, or attempts to shut them down. You learned that your inner world was inconvenient. As an adult, you probably struggle to know what you feel, or you feel things, and immediately judge yourself for feeling them, or you minimize your own emotions reflexively. The dismissal you received became the way you treat yourself. The third sign is that the relationship revolved around them. Emotionally immature parents tend to be, in subtle or not so subtle ways, the center of the family's emotional universe. Their moods set the temperature of the house. Their needs came first. Their version of events was the official version. There was little room for your separate reality. If you were upset about something they did, the conversation somehow became about their feelings, their hurt, their intentions, rather than your experience. You learned that there was not much space for you, that the emotional oxygen in the room was already taken. As an adult, you may find that you shrink in relationships, that you have trouble believing your needs are as valid as other people's, that you instinctively prioritize everyone else. You learned in childhood that you were a supporting character in someone else's story. The fourth sign is that you cannot remember being comforted. This one is quiet but devastating. Think back. Can you remember a time when you were upset and a parent sat with you, held you, helped you understand what you were feeling, made you feel less alone in your distress? For some people, these memories are abundant. For others, they search and find almost nothing. There were no soft landings. When you were hurt, you went to your room and dealt with it alone. When you were scared, you soothed yourself. When you cried, you did it quietly, where no one would be bothered. The absence of comfort is hard to notice because it is an absence, not an event. There is no specific memory of harm. There is just a missing thing, a quiet that should have been filled with someone's presence, and was not. As an adult, you probably struggle to let people comfort you. You handle things alone. You do not reach out when you are struggling. You learned very early that comfort was not available, so you stopped expecting it, and now you do not even know how to receive it. The fifth sign is that you walked on eggshells. There was an instability in the home, an unpredictability that kept you constantly alert. Maybe a parent had a temper that could flare without warning. Maybe the mood of the house could shift suddenly, and you never knew what would set it off. Maybe one parent was volatile and the other was checked out. You became an expert at reading the emotional weather, at sensing tension before it erupted, at modifying yourself to keep the peace. This hypervigilance was a survival skill, and it was brilliant, and it never turned off. As an adult, you probably scan every room, every relationship, for signs of danger. You sense other people's moods with uncanny accuracy. You feel responsible for keeping everyone okay. You struggle to relax because relaxing means letting your guard down, and your guard has been up since you were very small. The hypervigilance that protected you as a child now exhausts you as an adult. The sixth sign is that you learned love was conditional or inconsistent. The emotionally immature parents' love often came and went. It was present when you were pleasing them and withdrawn when you were not. Or it was warm in one moment and cold in the next, with no clear reason. Or it was expressed through provision, through things, through achievement, but rarely through emotional presence. You learned that love was not a stable ground you could stand on, but a shifting thing you had to earn and could lose. As an adult, this shows up everywhere. You may be anxious in relationships, constantly seeking reassurance, terrified of being abandoned. Or you may avoid closeness entirely, because closeness once meant the risk of withdrawal. You may overwork to earn love you do not believe you deserve simply for existing. The inconsistency you experienced became the template for how you expect love to behave. Now, if you recognized yourself in several of these, I want to talk about what to do, because recognition without a path forward just leaves you stuck in the pain. Before I get to the steps, I want to name something that often comes up at exactly this point: guilt. As you start to see your parents clearly, as you start to name what was missing, a wave of guilt often rises. Who am I to criticize them? They did their best. They had it harder than I did. They provided for me. Look at everything they gave me. This guilt is understandable, and it is also one of the main things that keeps people from healing. So let me say this clearly. Acknowledging that your parents were emotionally immature is not an attack on them. It is not ingratitude. It is not a failure to honor them. It is simply seeing reality accurately, which is the precondition for any healing. You can hold deep love and gratitude for your parents, and also acknowledge honestly that they could not give you certain things you needed. The two are not in conflict. In fact, the most loving thing you can do for them and for yourself is to see them clearly, limitations and all, and to love them as the real, flawed humans they are, rather than staying trapped in resentment of who they failed to be. Clear sight is not betrayal. It is the beginning of a more honest love and a more honest relationship with yourself. The first thing is to grieve. I know I say this in a lot of these conversations, but it is because it is true and because everyone wants to skip it. You have to grieve the parents you needed and did not have. This is complicated grief, because your parents may still be alive, may even be present in your life, may love you in the ways they are capable of. You are not grieving their death. You are grieving the absence of what you needed from them, an absence that persists even now. This grief is real, and it is allowed. You can love your parents and still grieve what they could not give you. Both are true. The grief, when felt, releases the energy you have spent hoping they would finally become the parents you needed. The second thing is to stop waiting for them to change. Many adult children of emotionally immature parents spend their lives in a kind of waiting for the apology, waiting for the acknowledgement, waiting for the parent to finally see them, finally meet them, finally become emotionally available. This waiting keeps you trapped because it makes your healing dependent on something that is very unlikely to happen. Emotionally immature people rarely become emotionally mature in old age. The waiting has to end, not because you give up on them, but because you give up on the fantasy that your wholeness depends on their transformation. Your healing is yours to do, regardless of whether they ever change. I want to be honest about how hard this is, because it is one of the hardest parts. There is a deep primal part of every human being that wants their parents to love them well. That want does not disappear just because you are an adult, just because you understand intellectually that they are limited, just because you have done years of work. The want is wired into us. So when I say stop waiting, I do not mean stop wanting. The wanting may never fully go away, and that is okay. I mean stop organizing your life around the hope that the wanting will be satisfied by them. You can hold the want with compassion, acknowledge that it is there, grieve that it will likely not be met by the original source, and then turn toward the sources that can actually meet it. That is the difference between waiting and accepting. Waiting keeps you facing backward, toward people who cannot give you what you need. Accepting lets you turn forward, toward a life where the need can actually be met. The third thing is to give yourself what you did not receive. This is the reparenting work. You learn to comfort yourself when you are distressed, the way no one comforted you. You learn to take your own feelings seriously, to be curious about your inner world instead of dismissing it. You learn to soothe your own hypervigilance, to remind your nervous system that you are safe now, that you are an adult, that the unpredictable home is in the past. You become, slowly, the stable, attuned, present caregiver that you needed and did not have. This is not a quick process. It is the work of years. But it is the work that actually heals. The fourth thing is to set boundaries with your parents as they are now. If your parents are still in your life and still emotionally immature, you need boundaries to protect yourself. This might mean limiting how much of your inner life you share with them, since they cannot hold it well. It might mean stepping back from the caretaker role you have always played. It might mean accepting the relationship for what it actually is, rather than what you wish it were, and engaging with them on those realistic terms. Boundaries are not punishment. They are the structure that allows you to be in relationship with people who cannot meet you fully without being repeatedly hurt by their limitations. The fifth thing is to find the emotional maturity you missed in other relationships. The good news is that the attunement you did not get from your parents can be found elsewhere. A good therapist can provide a model of emotional maturity, a relationship in which your feelings are met with curiosity and care. Emotionally mature friends and partners can show you what stable, present love actually feels like. Over time, these relationships can heal what the original relationships wounded. You are not limited to the emotional template your parents gave you. You can learn a new one from people who actually possess what your parents lacked. I want to add something here because a lot of people who do this work hit a specific obstacle. When you start to heal, when you start to set boundaries, when you stop playing the caretaker role, Your emotionally immature parents will often escalate. They may become more demanding, more wounded, more guilt-inducing because the system they relied on is changing and they do not like it. They may accuse you of being selfish, cold, ungrateful. This is not a sign you are doing something wrong. It is, in fact, often a sign you are doing something right. The system is resisting the change because the change threatens the old arrangement, the one where you took care of them and asked for nothing. Stay steady through this. The escalation usually settles eventually into a new equilibrium if you can hold your boundaries with both firmness and warmth. And if it does not settle, that itself is information about how much distance you may need for your own well-being. There is also a particular grief that comes up when you have children of your own. Many people do not fully feel the wound of their childhood until they hold their own child and realize, with sudden force, how easy it would have been to love them well, how naturally the attunement comes, how little it would have cost their own parents to give them what they needed. This realization can be overwhelming. It can bring up rage and sorrow in equal measure. If this happens to you, please be gentle with yourself. It is one of the most painful and also one of the most healing realizations a person can have, because in the very moment you grieve what you did not get, you are giving your own child what you missed, and the chain is breaking in your arms. I want to leave you with this. Growing up with emotionally immature parents leaves a particular kind of mark. It is not the obvious wound of clear abuse. It is the quieter wound of emotional neglect, of needs that went unmet, of a loneliness inside the family that you could never quite explain. Because the wound is quiet, many people carry it for decades without ever naming it, blaming themselves for their struggles, assuming that something is simply wrong with them. There is nothing wrong with you. You grew up emotionally undernourished, and you adapted the way any child would. Naming this is not betrayal of your parents. It is liberation for yourself. And once you can see it clearly, you can begin to give yourself the emotional nourishment you missed, and you can make sure that the children in your life, if you have them, receive what you did not. That is how the pattern ends. That is how the chain breaks. With you, seeing clearly, and choosing differently. If this resonated with you, please give the video a like. It really helps me reach more people who grew up with this and never had the words for it. And if you want more videos like this, where we name the quiet wounds and walk toward healing them, please subscribe. I have a lot more to share, and I would be honored to keep walking through it with you. Take care of yourself this week. Be gentle with the version of you that grew up emotionally alone. Offer yourself the comfort, the attunement, the presence that you did not receive. You deserved it then, and you deserve it now. And one last thing before you go. If watching this brought up more than you expected, if you found yourself recognizing sign after sign and feeling a grief you did not know was there, please be kind to yourself in the hours after. This is tender material. You may feel raw, or sad, or strangely relieved, or all of it at once. All of that is normal. You have just put words to something you carried wordlessly for most of your life, and that is a significant thing. Let yourself feel whatever comes. Reach out to someone safe if you need to. And know that naming the wound is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of the part where you finally get to heal. I will see you in the next one.